About a year ago, specifically on September 27, which almost passed French President Emmanuel Macron, he took the pills of courage and came out to us at that time with very striking statements in a press conference in which he attacked Europe because of its dependence on the Americans and in its strategic interests, which remain today. This is heading towards China and the Pacific. Monsieur Macron continued and said frankly they have the right to do this and more than that. But we remain naive people and make a big mistake. This burning talk was about 5 months ago, specifically in late February. The Russians did it and entered Ukraine. Then Macron and the rest of the European leaders ran into the arms of the Americans. And the United States led, as expected, the anti-Russian Western alliance and began formulating the alliance plan to target Moscow. And most of the sanctions that were imposed on Russia were in agreement American-European. What is important in this context is that the relationship between America and Europe and the nature of their anti-Russian alliance is very interesting. If you understand this relationship, you will be able to absorb a lot of the events that happened recently. From a few days ago, specifically on September 2nd, which surprised the Russians and decided to suspend the pumping of gas into the Nord Stream 1 line for an indefinite period. This is a big blow to Europe. We still do not know its consequences. Hours before the decision was taken, America was able to convince its European allies, after strong American insistence, that they agree to a very provocative punishment for Russia targeting its oil sector in particular. Mubashir, if you agree to this punishment, they will completely ban gas from Europe. And secondly, because the Europeans are already drinking now and they are entering the winter without sufficient quantities of gas, and therefore they are in dire need of every cubic meter of Russian gas, and this is the dilemma of the Americans. For example, in which America is not enough gas is also exported, and therefore there is no direct harm to it from the Russians stopping the export of gas that has passed. This all leads you to a very logical question: did America implicate Europe too much on Russia when it does not face the same consequences? Is it not the Europeans whose accounts are not accurate and do not have foresight? And what is the punishment that provoked the Russians so strong that it made them play the most important card in their hand, which is the gas card? This is part of what we will be chatting about in this day's episode. I am Reg, let's go. On September 2nd, the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, came out at a press conference in Germany and said, "Oh people, Europe needs to impose a maximum price for natural gas that you buy through." Of course, if we assume that the pipelines are being implemented, the ruins of homes will remain for the important Russians on the same day. The former Russian president and deputy head of the Russian Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, responded to the President of the European Commission in a short message he posted on his account on Telegram, in which he said if this happened, no Russian gas would be delivered for Europe. After this message, how many hours did the Russians actually cut off gas from Europe? What prompted the Russians to take this violent step? I will tell you: the finance ministers of Canada, France, Germany, Italy, the United Kingdom, Japan, and the United States. The countries of the finance ministers of the member states of the Group of Seven, the Honorable Seven countries, were meeting in Germany on September 2nd, and at this meeting they agreed to implement the price ceiling plan aimed at besieging the Russian oil sector, specifically the approval of the 7 countries, including the 4 largest economies in Europe, on this plan is considered a victory and a very big achievement for U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, because she is the owner of this infernal idea, of course the idea that the punishment of the price ceiling was based on. It is necessary to see it if you want to understand the full picture of the issue. But let me here give you a quick idea of the main features of this punishment from the reality of the statement issued at the end of the last meeting of the finance ministers of the Group of 7 countries. The final statement says that the gathered countries agree to punish shipping companies any white re in the world if it transported any Russian oil or petroleum products, and said that it is the only case in which these companies will be allowed to transport oil and petroleum products. And the wish is that this oil will be sold at a price equal to or less than the maximum that they are going to set. I mean, in my country, The idea of the American minister is summed up in the fact that she sets a ceiling or maximum for the price of Russian oil in the market and wants to oblige the whole world that no one buys Russian oil at a price higher than the price until now. They have not yet agreed on a specific price, but the price that they will agree on will certainly be much lower than the market price. And we are seeing Brent crude now working for more than $93 a barrel. The Americans can come and say no one buys Russian oil for more than $20 a barrel, for example. Whoever pays an extra cent, we will punish him, as is clear. The goal of this punishment is to reduce Russia's revenues from its exports of crude oil and Russian petroleum products. In June, but they sold oil for more than $20 billion. This price cap plan remains what America and its allies agreed on. Its goal is not but depriving Russia of these billions, but also humiliating it, because it will deprive the Russians of their revenues without the market being affected. The important thing is our colleague, German Finance Minister Christian Lindner, who was chairing the meeting in which agreement on the plan came out after the meeting, told reporters that Russia is making great profits from the export, and this is something we must resist, and the price ceiling plan that we agreed upon will also help reduce inflation in Europe, and of course given that Russian oil will remain available in the market with cheap oil, sir. After the end of this meeting and the minister's statements, the German in how many hours? But the Russians threw the news of a bomb that shook the whole world without exaggeration. There is number 1 cubic meter of gas that will reach Germany. What exactly happened is that on the evening of the same day, which is September 2nd, the Gazprom company of the Russian government and responsible for operating Nord Stream 1 said that you will not be able to resume the process of pumping gas into the line that transports gas from Russia to Germany. This line was closed on August 31st, which was late on the basis that maintenance would be done for it for 3 days, and it was supposed to be operating again from the end of September 2nd. But the Russians decided that they would not operate this line as the second one until when will you stop the line that feeds Germany and other European countries behind it? He told you we don't know why the line won't work again at all. According to Gazprom's words, what happened was that while she was checking the line before restarting it, she discovered by pure chance a technical defect. Specifically a leak in one of the turbines at the Porto Via station that helps pump gas into the line. And since this turbine was the last turbine already working in the line will stop. The Europeans, on the other hand, received the Russian decision with a mixture of surprise and skepticism. The reason for the surprise is that until the evening of September 2nd all the talk was that Gazprom would operate the line again after the end of the maintenance process, as it did before that in the last July. Do you think about the need for this line? Before it closed for maintenance on August 31st it was operating at only 20% of its natural capacity. But the Europeans were not opposed to 20% better than nothing at the same time. The Europeans questioned the credibility of the Russians' words about the real reason for stopping pumping gas inside line, and the European Union described Gazprom's words as false allegations. Gazprom is silent? Of course not. The Russian company, in order to confirm its words, published a picture showing the leakage in the turbine. This is the picture in front of you, but the leakage that appears in the picture has been questioned about its importance or the extent of its severity. The German company Siemens Energy, which the Russians usually use in the maintenance of Nord Stream turbines 1, she said that the leakage of this age does not cause the line to stop operating. She also said that the pressure station in which the turbine was located, in which the leak occurred, has other healthy turbines that can operate Nord Stream 1. Gazprom on the other side, saying that it has reached Siemens Energy with the new leak in the turbine. She also said that the maintenance that this turbine needs cannot be done except in a specialized maintenance facility. This means that the turbine may need to go to the facility affiliated with Siemens Energy in Canada, and when the turbine travels, repairs and returns safely from Canada, they should try to operate the line again. But away from the European questioning of Gazprom's credibility, whether questioning what happened on the part of politicians or on the part of technicians, all this is understandable and expected. What is not understandable to me, and perhaps the most reaction to the Russian decision caught my attention and surprised him, it is the American reaction. The spokesman for the U.S. National Security Council of the White House came out on Friday evening and said a very interesting statement. This cute person said it is not surprising that Russia uses energy as a weapon. No man, technology and the banking system as economic weapons against Russia. What is its position? Was it all pasta with sauce? Not all this is arming tools that are not usually used as a weapon. The Russians simply play the same way they play with them. But in any case, they will take us away from this comedic American statement and leave us in the benefit of the Russians today. To fill their tanks, gas stocks within the European Union are currently approaching 80%, and this is a very excellent percentage compared to the goals of the Union. Especially since Europe reached it about 2 months before the beginning of the winter season. But the problem is that these stocks alone are not enough, and we cannot consider it a guarantee because the Europeans are certainly not. They will live in a difficult winter if the Europeans fill their gas tanks completely before the winter season. This amount will suffice them at best for 3 months. But according to the estimates of energy research, this means that next year they will face difficulty in providing for their American gas needs. They have a problem with gas and do not need Russian gas in 2021. America was a net exporter of natural gas for the 5th year in a row, and this does not only leave them unaffected from the recent decision of the Russians, but also from the rise in gas prices in the market, and therefore we can say that the main and possibly the only victims of the Russians' movements in the gas market are the Europeans. Will the Europeans be able to coexist with the absence of Russian gas in the winter? Possible, but it will certainly be a very difficult winter for them. Especially since it will certainly witness a huge rationalization in energy consumption levels, whether for individuals, factories and businesses. Will this make them think about not carrying out the punishment they agreed upon with the U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, which concerns the issue of the price ceiling? God knows, but the Russians, on the other hand, are not standing and watching, and so far they have shown very strong resistance in the face of this possible punishment on the same day that the finance ministers of the group of 7 countries met. Dmitry Peskov, the Kremlin spokesman, came out and said that Russia would not sell oil to any country that would participate in it. The plan for the price ceiling that the Americans are promoting, and apart from the comments of the Russians, we can say that there are 2 main obstacles that will most likely be a reason for never implementing this price cap plan. On this plan, this is doubtful because the Europeans are not standing at the same distance from Russia. Take for example Hungary. Hungary said that it will not participate in this price cap plan, and so it struck a screwdriver in the European consensus. At the same time, the Hungarians still in August agreed with the Russian company Gazprom that it followed them with additional quantities of natural gas through the Turk Stream line. In this context, Hungary is not in its interest to anger the Russians. Where will they bring gas? And then Europe in recent months has not been the main market for Russian oil. The customers of Russian oil now and the ones who need Americans and Europeans to convince them to participate in the price cap plan are Asians, specifically India, China, and Indonesia. The Indians told officials in the U.S. State Department last August that all they care about is that they are buying cheap oil, and they are already getting it from Russia, and therefore they are not interested in participating in the Indonesian price cap plan. So the Russians told you in the first place that they offer us oil at a 30% discount. The Chinese also have their accounts with Russia, which prevents them from participating in the price cap plan. You know. What does it mean? It means that the Europeans, at the behest of the Americans, waived a punishment in which there were great doubts about their ability to implement it, and that caused the Russians to provoke. He suffers, and the extent of the damage he has suffered due to the Western sanctions is great and will appear clearly in the medium and long term. But the Russian economy up to the moment and despite everything is somehow still coherent, and this is a great achievement given the ferocity of the economic war that this topic has been exposed to. But now I have concluded my words, and as usual I have a question for you. In your opinion, how will the Russian-Ukrainian war end? Will it end with the surrender of one of the parties and the victory of the other, or will it only be resolved by agreement and negotiations? I will follow all your answers in the comments, and in the end, I hope you liked this episode and would like to see us again. Subscribe to the channel and wait for new episodes.